right, Tom. Should we pull out another team? Your
Let's do it.
Abraham Lincoln hat.
Whip out the magic. That's the good thing about this hat is because it's always honest. There's no deceit or funny
no funny
business
buggers
going on here. So I'll just pull out a different piece of paper. And on this card, I've got the Gold Coast Suns, who
interesting.
another team that finished low down the ladder last year, as they have every year in their existence, except for one, and even that they failed to make the 8. So, look, a lot of talk about the Suns in the preseason is centred around Ben King, which is it's tragic. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. It's tragic for multiple reasons, because not only is it does it affect the Suns' win and loss record this year, but at least 2 people's jobs, being Stuart Dew and Ben King, could very, very likely be affected by this injury. You know, who's to say whether or not Ben King playing or missing the year will affect his decision to come home or not at the end of the season? But I don't think it could help. Like, it's probably either neutral or negative. And, you know, Stewie Dew is, you know, he's really under the pump, as we know. But I think the issue with the Suns is, with King missing, can they scrounge the 12 to 14 goals they need to win most weeks? You know, that's probably unlikely. I think that they will have games, obviously, where they're going to, you know, they showed last year they have good days, and they will continue to have good days. But without King there, I don't think the forward line is strong enough. They're going to rely a lot on guys like Sexton to kick goals, and we've seen in the past he's not necessarily a favourite of Stewie Dew's either. So that's the main issue for me. The midfield's starting to look okay. Took Miller's obviously an absolute gun. You know, Rowell and Anderson will be better again, and hopefully we see more footy out of Rowell this year. The backline's pretty good. Like, Sam Collins is a high-quality defender. They've got Charlie Ballard back there who's good, and
Will Powell.
Will Powell off half-back, yeah. So, you know, the pieces are there, but the forward line to me is just too thin, and I just don't see how they're going to get the 12 to 14 goals without King there. So it's disappointing to have them ranked so low again. I think most of the footy world would like to see them improve, but I'm not quite sure that circumstances are going to fall their way.
Well, with Ben King, they were a bottom 3 forward line of the competition, probably.
Yeah.
Like, that's with one of the bright young stars of the competition. Without him, I think they're clearly the worst. They don't have...
Yep.
I'm not sure if you can really make an argument that they've got an above-average player in that forward line without King down there. And that, I mean, that's harsh to say, but I think it's just the reality.
It's true. Unless, I mean, Lukosius isn't an above-average forward yet. He's an above-average player.
Yeah. So. I was thinking that there's some options, I suppose, to throw them around. Maybe Isaac Rankin comes back into the side and capitalises on some of that talent. Maybe Lukosius does go to the forward line, which is where he was drafted as. He was drafted as a sort of mid to tall forward. Neither of them have shown that they can do that. But I think you're right in saying, I think it's a massive negative in terms of King's contract. And, like, let's be completely honest, this is the overriding story. Ben King's contract, obviously those other 2 guys I just mentioned, their contracts, Stuart Dew with Alistair Clarkson floating around out there. The story is not going to be, unless they start winning a bunch of games, and you and I can't really see that happening, I don't think. The story is going to be who signs and who doesn't sign. And the best way to get a player to sign a contract extension is to win games. And as you say, it's going to be real hard to do that without Ben King. So, yeah, I think, and it's a shame because, as you say, the midfield is starting to look quite nice. Rowell and Anderson, obviously, looking good. Elijah Hollins is apparently looking pretty good in the preseason. The defence is solid enough. It doesn't probably have quite, like, it's probably missing a little bit of star factor in the defence, but they've got very good, solid players. Like, they're good enough to be fine, you know, like a fine team in defence. The midfield could have a lot of stars. It's just the forward line is not going to be effective enough, I don't think, to kick enough winning scores. I think it's going to be one of those seasons where, yeah, as you say, they're probably going to beat a couple of good teams, but those 3 guys may well walk out at the end And then where are we left? Are we left with Rowell and Anderson being out of contract at the end of next year as well? I mean, we could be looking at the shutting down or the shifting of the Suns, really. I mean, unless they can convince Clarkson to go up there, and that would be a massive get, of course.
I still think that the shutting down or the shifting of the Suns is another decade of, bottom four finishes away. I just don't think the AFL is going to pack it in this soon into the experiment, despite what lots of people call for. But I think there's two things for me this year that the Suns that I think will be signs of a really positive year. One is obviously King re-signing, which, I think is a possibility. There's certainly every chance that he does go home, but it's not a foregone conclusion by any stretch. And the other thing is to make Metricon a bit of a fortress. If they can really make it hard for teams to travel there, it's not seen as we've got Gold Coast on the fixture. We're going it's a win.
Yeah.
If they're playing in Metricon, you want to make it hard for teams to go there. And if they can win, 8 home games this year and pinch 1 or 2 away games, then I think that would be a good year for them. But yeah, I mean, if Alistair Clarkson wants the job, nothing short of a premiership or a grand final appearance is probably going to save Shuey Jew.
No, unfortunately. I think he's a very good chance to get the job, because they'll just offer him so much money that it will be almost impossible to say no. He'll get money thrown in from every angle that the AFL can possibly conceptualise of getting money thrown in, which may or may not count in the soft cap. But they'll get him up there if they can. And I think that will. I mean, if Clarko goes up there, I think Ben King goes from what I would see as being like 80% chance to leave. I think that goes to a 50-50, like really fast.
Yep, but that's a fair call.
But we'll see if he may make his decision before that, or he might have already made his decision. Like Ben King could have. The thing that I always think is interesting when people say, he's not going to leave, or why would he leave, or blah, blah, blah. I mean, why would he leave? Everyone knows why he would leave. But Ben King could have ended this conversation at any time over the last 12 months. He could have signed an extension. He was extension eligible. He could have signed an extension at any point. The fact that he hasn't shows that at the very least he's not convinced that the Suns is his future. And like, there's no argument that you can make like, he would have made more money or whatever. The Suns are going to pay Ben King whatever he wants to stay. Like, that's just going to be, they'll back the Brinks truck up and dump all the cash in his front yard if he wants. So yeah, he could have ended it. He hasn't, and therefore it will continue to be a conversation for the whole season. But anyway, Tom, let's move on to the next club.